What is going on, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at F-14B versus the MiG-29G, both in BFM and BVR engagements. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe so you can see more and leave a like. I'd really appreciate that. And before we break down the details of what you are seeing on your screen, a quick word from today's video sponsor, Free GE for War Thunder. Free GE for War Thunder is an app you can download on the Google Play Store that lets you complete various tasks of varying difficulty. The harder the task, the more golden eagles you get, and yes, completing these tasks gives you golden eagles for free. I would recommend just doing an easy task that offers a little bit of golden eagles. Get yourself a day of premium time, help you grind, all that good stuff. So click the link in the description down below and use my code on screen for 10 extra golden eagles. I wanted to make this video because there have been some flight model changes to the MiG-29, and the MiG-29G is new, so obviously it's not going to be beating an F-16. The MiG-29 never could, and it probably never will beat an F-16 in 1v1, but what about the F-14B, also a very popular US top-tier jet? Well, it's kind of not what you would expect, to be honest. The F-14 having the only active radar homing missiles in the game, combined with a load of Sparrows, you would think this thing would be a great BVR fighter. And the MiG-29 being able to pull a lot of AOA would be a really good BFM fighter for the F-14. Well, it's actually kind of the opposite, where flight performance wise, the F-14 actually wins pretty handily against the MiG-29G in a 1v1. Not only can you just simply outrate the MiG-29G, as in just kind of fly in a circle until the 29G runs out of energy and it starts to stall out, but in many cases, once you get out of that high speed range and you can actually get your flaps down, the F-14 is going to be beating it in a scissor type fight as well. So if you're going to be just turning and burning on the deck, rolling back and forth with each other, the F-14 wins. And if it lasts a long time and you just kind of keep flying in a circle and doing your rate, the F-14 also wins. And this was tested with 20 minutes of fuel for each aircraft. I don't do min fuel dogfights with top tier jets because honestly it's just kind of comical and silly at that point, at least in my opinion. And in your average top tier game, you're probably not going to be fighting on min fuel. Sure, it's going to happen a lot, but I'd say somewhere between 20 and 10 minutes of fuel is going to be the most common fuel range to be dogfighting, because anything less, you're probably going to be RTB anyways at that point. And anything more, it's probably a little bit early in the match to actually be getting into a dogfight. So just to reiterate, flight performance wise, the MiG-29G is a 912 MiG-29, so it's the same flight model as the MiG-29As. And the other MiG-29 flight model is the SMT. The SMT did get a little bit better, so the gap between the 912 and the SMT isn't very large anymore. It is actually pretty small, but the 29G definitely does still have a little bit better performance. Not that it matters though, because both of the MiG-29s are going to be losing to the F-14 in a dogfight at pretty much everything. What I do want you to notice though is the MiG-29 has a pretty considerable weapon, and that is the HMD R73. The R73 can honestly kind of win the dogfight for you in a MiG-29. As long as you have the HMD and as long as you have an R73, you can just kind of point your plane in the general direction. And unless the F-14 is flying it absolutely perfectly, it's going to be pretty easy sometimes to find yourself a little window to get an R73 shot in. Of course, this can still be countered by pre-flaring on the F-14's part, or just trying to stay at the high 6 of the MiG-29 so that he can't get the R73 off in general. Definitely viable strategies. I didn't really do that a whole lot in this video because I was just kind of testing the capabilities of the F-14 against the 29. But the point is that if you're going up against an R73 carrying MiG-29, which is most of them, well, I guess it's half of them at this point, isn't it? If they have R73s, it is pretty easy to screw it up, and you have to be very careful about how you choose to dogfight a MiG-29. Yes, your flight performance is way better, but again, really easy to slip up, and you might be eating an R73, as I showcase a couple of times throughout these clips. They did catch me by surprise. They hit shots I didn't think they were going to be hitting whatsoever. Thought I was safe, and then I just eat one anyways. So yeah, don't take any chances. As far as flaring goes, after the launch of an R73, you're going to have a pretty tough time flaring it in anything but like a more frontal aspect shot, like that one you saw on screen there. Sure, that's pretty flareable, but if it's kind of in the rear hemisphere of your plane at all, or even somewhat to the side into the rear, you're not going to be flaring it in the F-14 after it's come off of the rail. Maybe if you have some more distance, like say a 2-kilometer launch, you might still have time to change aspect and flare that R73. But that's not much of a dogfight at that point, is it, if you're 2 kilometers of separation? So in a dogfight range, if that R73 comes off of the rail and you haven't pre-flared it already and it's behind you, you're kind of just dead. And it's more or less the same story for the MiG-29 against the AIM-9L. Now the AIM-9L is a little bit better because flares take time to heat up and actually get hot. If you're within a kilometer and a half with an AIM-9L and you shoot the rear of a MiG-29, he's probably not going to be able to flare it in time. He definitely can. It's just going to be pretty tricky, and he's going to have to pull some strings, lose some energy, change aspect, maybe lose some positioning because of that. And so the point being is just be careful with these missiles in a rear aspect launch, and especially so with an R73, it's best to just pre-flare it anyways. You have a lot of countermeasures in the Tomcat. Even running mixed, I have 350 of each on this F-14B, and so there's absolutely no reason why I shouldn't just be pre-flaring every single R73. Of course, I'm not on screen as you're clearly seeing, but there's no reason why I can't. So let's talk BVR a little bit. I do want to start by just disclaiming, putting it out there that these fights you're seeing on screen for BVR is pretty dang unrealistic. Sure, the 1v1s might be a little unrealistic too, because you're not going to be 1v1ing a whole lot in top tier, rarely ever for that matter, but it could still happen, and that's more or less what it would look like. The thing is with the BVR engagements is this, against a good player, it's not really realistic. I'm restricting us here because I'm not allowing us to just hug the deck and avoid dying to any of these radar missiles, because as you guys know, if you stay right above the ground level, the radar missiles aren't going to hit you. That's fine and all, and I highly encourage you doing that in ARB to avoid dying to radar missiles, but it's a little bit fun sometimes to climb and try to get a max range radar missile kill. And not only that, it wouldn't make good video if we just hugged the ground the entire time until we merged and went into a dogfight. So we do have to maintain some altitude here and just notch and chaff the incoming radar missiles. And where does the F-14 line up against the MiG-29? Well, it still just loses. There's no other way of putting it. The MiG-29's R27ER is still indisputably the best radar missile in the entire game. The Phoenixes technically outrange it by a hair, just a little bit, but as far as useful range goes, the extra range the Phoenix has isn't going to offer you very much. I'm going to try to shoot a lot of Phoenixes early on just to kind of keep him defensive and push into Sparrow range, but it doesn't really matter in the end. He can notch them pretty easily. He just goes 90 degrees, he chaffs them, I lose my radar locks. Sure, you guys are probably going to comment down below, why didn't you just switch radar mode mid-launch? You know, you can switch from pulse Doppler to normal SRC radar mode while guiding a missile, and that works to not lose the lock. The problem is it becomes significantly easier to chaff at that point, and there's not going to be a whole lot you can do to defend against that. So either way, going 90 degrees, you're going to be losing that missile launch regardless, whether it be due to just notching the radar or whether it be to chaffing and notching the radar. And at this point, he is 28 kilometers away, so unless I get my missile off pretty damn early, he is always going to have an advantage at this point. The R27ER is going to get me in entire seconds before my Sparrows are going to get to him. And I'm talking maybe 4-5 seconds sooner than when my Sparrows get there. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a very large amount of time in terms of time to target and impact and stuff like that. And so he is cold now, so we have completed an objective, but the problem is if I launch a missile right now, once he turns around to engage me again, he's pretty much just going to automatically notch me, and I will lose the lock and have to fire again. And so I wait until he turns head on, and I'm hoping that I get my Sparrow off way before he's able to acquire me on his radar, lock me and shoot. And it kind of looks like I did, but the R27ER is just so fast, man, and so I'm forced to go defensive here. Maybe in hindsight I should have stuck that Sparrow launch, maybe it would have gotten to him first, but it was 4 kilometers and screaming right at me, so I just decided to go full defensive there, counter that missile, and he's already got his off before I can even shoot a Sparrow. I try to go vertical here with a 90-degree angle, chaff the ER, it doesn't work, and I end up eating that one. And so there's really not too many ways I can beat his ER here in any situation at all. Basically, I would have to rely on the fact that he just can't acquire me in time, he doesn't see me in time, he can't get the lock in time, and therefore I get like a 5 or 6 second head start in guiding my Sparrow. I might actually win that engagement. But if he hits his ER off at any point at like 6 seconds or sooner, I'm not going to be hitting him, at least not before I also eat his ER, and I don't want to die, I don't want to trade. The goal here is to actually win the fight, and so I'm going to try a new strategy here. I'm climbing up to high altitude, just going high altitude to use my Phoenixes and kind of take advantage of them with their long range capability and try to force him defensive at strategic points in time to push in for a Sparrow shot. And I'm climbing 90 degrees perpendicular to him in hopes that maybe he's still just searching for me in Pulse Doppler and he's not going to see me on the radar, and hopefully I'll kind of get a jump on him with positioning here. But the distance is so great, he has plenty of time to react. The Phoenix is not a scary missile, and even so, he can probably just see my contrail, to be honest with you, because War Thunder contrails render in at very far range, and so there's really no sneaking up on him. There's not really much getting around it. I'm going to try anyways, just for the sake of the video, and kind of show you guys different ways to approach the situation. But I mean, you can see, I can see his contrail right now, so I'm sure he can probably see mine. And so I'm going to maintain the notch a little bit here for until we close the distance, and I'm going to turn in, try to get some Phoenixes off. I'm only carrying 2 this time because 4 just seemed excessive. They're really not that useful. They're going to be more helpful for, again, firing them at strategic moments in time to try to force them defensive and push in for a Sparrow shot. And I'm going to use the combination of the Phoenix and the Sparrow to try to give myself that head start on the Sparrow launch that I was talking about earlier. I know my voice keeps cracking. I'm sorry, I'm sick, so it's cracking more than usual. You're just going to have to deal with it. I apologize. We get the Phoenix off, then we try to follow it up with a Sparrow. The Sparrow is obviously not tracking and blows up midair. And it doesn't really look like the Phoenix is doing a great job at tracking either. It might reacquire the lock, though, at least. But he's doing the right thing, and he's just notching me until I close distance. And I have no choice but to close the distance because I need to get within Sparrow range, and I need to ultimately try to get into a merge with him. That's going to be pretty difficult, considering we can't just hug the ground. And yes, I could just maintain a 90-degree angle on him the entire time until he gets close enough for me to turn in, but that wouldn't be very BVR-like either. You guys probably wouldn't enjoy watching that very much. And so we push in a little bit more. I'm watching for the ERs. He still hasn't shot one at me, and it looks like he's defending against my incoming missile, so everything looks like it's going according to plan still. I relock him here. He's still flying at a weird angle. My radar's kind of freaking out, seeing everything but him. Luckily, I can see his contrail, so I know where he is still. And I just hold ACM until it picks him up here. Questionable decision on my end because now my timing is off. I don't get that head start on my Sparrow guide, and he already has an ER at me. So we're just going to go 90 degrees. We're going to chaff the incoming ER, and now we're within just 5 kilometers. So hopefully I can kind of pull in here to get a merge going, and I can actually get into a dogfight with him because I'm a lot more confident in winning that. And so I'm going to begin to turn in, kind of still holding perpendicular, but he manages to get a lock on me anyways and shoot an ER, and I'm dead. So that's been the F-14B versus the MiG-29G. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you